So I wanted to say, tell you another story about this inward quality to look for. You know, people when they get on the spiritual path, they really want to be doing something different. So this is one thing that you can do that is really different. Rather than looking at what's superficially appearing to come at you as unattractive, unwanted, and other, here's a story of someone who chose differently. It's a great scientist, Barbara McClintock, in the 20th century, United States. She died in her early 90s, and her obituary was on the front page of the New York Times in the spaces reserved for great statesmen. She was the greatest American biologist of the 20th century, arguably one of the greatest scientists in the 20th century, America. In her obituary, she was eulogized by one of her colleagues as, quote, a mystic who knew where the mysteries lie, but do not mystify.
Wow. That's great.
Barbara McClintock, as a young woman, became fascinated with genetic transposition. She wanted to know how genes moved, carried their messages from one place to another. In her day, there were none of the instruments that we have or the chemical procedures we have now, only hunches and hypotheses and clues and the power of human imagination. And the mystical capacity to identify with the other and still respect its otherness. She exercised the mystical capacities at the heart of her work in genetic science. I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. The price she paid for that was to be marginalized in her profession. She was scoffed at. Her work was distrusted. She couldn't get grants. She couldn't get articles published. She couldn't get laboratory space. And then she won the Nobel Prize, and then everything turned around. Another scientist named Evelyn Fox Keller came along when McClintock was in her early 80s and said, I would like to write your biography, your story as a scientist. Tell me, how do you do great science? And Barbara McClintock, who was one of the most precise empirical observers of her time, one of the most analytic thinkers that have ever existed on the American scientific stage, she thought for a moment and she said, about the only thing I can tell you about the doing of science is that you somehow have to have a feeling for the organism. Keller asked her again, tell me, how do you do great science? McClintock, who was at that age when all that's left is to tell the truth, thought for a moment again about these ears of corn that she had worked with all her life because they were cheap and plentiful. And she said, really, all I can tell you about doing great science is that somehow you have to learn to lean into the kernel. At that point in the book, Evelyn Fox Keller, herself a physical chemist, writes a sentence that is so brilliant and luminous. She says, Barbara McClintock, in her relation with ears of corn, practiced the highest form of love, which is the intimacy that does not annihilate difference. She had a relationship with ears of corn that we all yearn to have with other people.
Wow.
And she knew it was possible to have that kind of relationship with all creatures and all forms of being. Simple respect, sacredness, intimacy that does not annihilate difference. A mystic who did not mystify, but who knew where the mysteries lie. Here was a scientist, Nobel Prize winning, responsible for the genetic breakthroughs that we now live with, a heroine in her own arena, who practiced the highest form of love in doing science itself. It's a wonderful book by a man named Jeremy Narby called The Cosmic Serpent, who went down to South America as a young anthropologist to find out for American chemists how these natives were discovering what plants to look at for use as medicine. And they all said to him, well, the plants talk to us. They sing to us. And his book is astounding. as to what happened to him on account of they've said that. So Barbara McClintock respected Ears of Corn in their integrity, as if they were an alien nation. At the same time, she believed an ear of corn had an inwardness to it, had a mind, had a consciousness. She once said, "I learned to think like corn." The corn thought, and you could learn to think like it. And her great science didn't mystify that. It built on that and used her intuitive capacities to enter the mind of corn in a way that led to a breakthrough and many scientific discoveries. Another short story of Parker Palmer's, when he taught at a college called Berea College in Kentucky. It's a remarkable college. It's devoted to the people of Appalachia. They don't pay any money to go to the college because they don't have any money. And he was teaching a course in literature. And the way he decided to teach it was to ask his kids to write autobiographical stories surrounding the theme that they felt that the great book was about. So that they understood that all stories were their stories and that they were in all stories. This is a way of respecting the other, of finding the inwardness, the relatedness, of making a priority in education of relationship. And look what happens. You know, we're very, very busy pouring a lot of work into the things we do. Our day is just so filled, we get so self-important with the busyness that we can't take a phone call and we can't respond to someone who needs us, even just for a moment. We need to change that, because that's grace. Spaciousness, availability, flexibility. Right? Availability is openness, not constantly needing to do, being okay, just being there. That's part of the art of appreciation of the day, right? Open up time, and then time won't imprison you like it seems to. Just open it up. The last thing I just wanted to say, I wanted to talk for a moment about humility. Because grace cannot exist without it, and neither can power. And there's power in it. I remember when I was a very young actor and I was in the class of a great acting teacher, Uta Hagen. She was a great actor and a great teacher. And I did a little monologue that I had translated from the French by a wonderful French writer of a little waitress, young waitress out in the boonies, cleaning up after all the customers had gone at the end of the day. And as she's wiping the tables and putting the chairs up and washing the floor and all, she's musing about the things that she likes that ultimately take her to talking about the man she's going to love and what that love will be like. And it moves into the most extraordinary place where she says, I don't care how that person treats me. When I make the decision that I will love him, I will love him. And it's quite surprising that this young child really has the insight to speak that way about her future. And when I finished the scene, Uta used to scribble with a pencil her notes while you were doing the scene. Oh my God, it was the most terrifying thing in the world, especially if she started writing right away. You thought, I'm doomed, you know? I'm at the start of the scene and she's already got a criticism. So, you know, the more she wrote, the more terrified you got. She hadn't written anything, and I forgot about it, actually. And when she turned on the lights, her eyes were red. and she looked at me so hard. She said, "I'm crying somewhat on account of what you did." But she said, "I'm really crying on account of what I'm about to tell you." Because she said, what you did is your power. It was your true vulnerability. And if you don't know that, I have nothing to teach you.
Wow.
I never forgot that day. I never forgot that day. Humility is wholeness. It means all of you, every part. To bring every part. You will never want to reach for power because you will understand immediately your connection to other people, and there will be no need to be afraid of them. Do you understand what I'm saying? When we recover a sense of the sacred through humility, through joining up, we would recover our capacity for wonder and surprise. An absolutely essential quality for life to be full of vitality. Right? When people think that competition is the way to inspire ideas, they forget that when something is competitive, you don't reach for a new idea. It's too risky, right? You don't know where that competition is going to take you. You don't know what flank is going to be exposed. It's too harsh an environment for people to be open and imaginative and fresh and allow themselves to be a little bit out of control, to discover something new, to make the experiment. In competition, you flatten the landscape. You reach, for anything, an old idea, a habit, an untruth even, just to play it safe. The sacred landscape is a topographical bonanza. There's hills and there's valleys and there's tropical forests and there's the tundra. Right? It's a place where surprise is our constant companion. And surprise is an intellectual virtue beyond all telling. The word humility comes from humus, which means earth, right? Earthiness and earthliness. So humility, earthiness, that has such a confident sound, doesn't it? When people are earthy, they're real. They're real. And you feel like you could be with them. They're down to earth. I say this over and over again. In Buddhism, they say samsara and nirvana, this suffering earth and heaven, are the same place. The same place. The difference between you and a Buddha is that every object to a Buddha brings bliss, brings happiness, brings rejoicing, brings tenderness and relatedness. And to us, it can bring fear, competition, disturbance, anger, and the need for getting power over someone. We can afford to do the experiment like Barbara McClintock and to find the intimacy that does not annihilate and the love, right? It's not sentimental, it's not romantic, it's real. Right? And choose relatedness. Real relatedness, sweet relationships as our highest priority, preeminence. And that's grace. Chogyam Trungpa, a great Buddhist teacher, used to say, enlightenment is ego's ultimate disappointment. And he also said, back to my story of driving Miss Daisy, the essence of warriorship, or the essence of human bravery, is refusing to give up on anyone or anything. He says, we do not have to be ashamed of what we are. As sentient beings, we have wonderful backgrounds. These backgrounds may not be particularly enlightened or peaceful or intelligent. Nevertheless, we have good soil enough to cultivate, and we can plant anything in it.
I love it.
So I thank you for the great privilege of teaching you tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to say,
please teach,
thank you.
Please stay.
Thank you.
Please
I
stay.
will please stay.
Understood.
I'll keep juicing.
That's a good thing.
I just want to say that, this really is a moment for Rick and me coming up in the new year. We're going to move out of California. We're going to come back home here.
Wow. Really?
As a result of this. And, at the end of a Buddhist teaching, we have a tradition where we give away the merit of being here tonight. As they say, in order to have something, you have to give it away. So even the good, feelings that we have about being here, we give that away too. We offer it up for the total good. And I would like to also include in that my tremendous gratitude to Jesse Fallon, who I grew up with, learning Buddhism from Lamaji, and who took the helm of your center and stayed the course, sometimes when things were very difficult too. And I'm really, really grateful to him, really, really grateful to him that you're all still here. This place is humming along. We will somehow find a new space to be in. We will carry on, and no matter how complicated it gets, we'll sort it through. So we are feeling very humble, very grateful, and very excited to be coming home. So I thank you all for your perseverance in the study of this great spiritual path, and we hope to continue to teach you in the very best way we can. And if any of you have ideas or suggestions for us, please let us know. We would be happy to hear them. All right. Have a good day.